instrument cluster for a Mitsubishi Pajero 2001, 2003, I guess, 2000s, that series. Mine it's a diesel engine, but it doesn't matter, the idea is the same. They come with light bulbs, a bunch of light bulbs that will illuminate the cluster, the instruments, and a bunch of those to indicate different functions like some brakes, warning, ABS, uh, water in the fuel, uh, engine check stuff. Then you have the lights to light up the gear, then the gear shifter number, the doors, and you have lights for the transmission, for the differential and stuff like that. And they come with light bulbs like this type. They are installed in sockets, so you can unscrew these things, take it out. But the thing with these ones, they burn. Every couple of years you may have to replace it, and for that you have to take the whole instrument cluster out. And it's easy to replace one of these ones. Like I said, you just unscrew it and it will come out. And they come in different sizes. The little ones are for the transmission, for the gear shifter, gear number. Then you have a little bit larger ones. I have one around that are for the doors and for the transmission. So I'm going to show you on the other side. But before you want to remove this thing, you start the little job to remove any of the lights. You may get replacements, original ones or replacements from some auto parts stores. I'm not sure. You may have to check online. I haven't checked online. What I did in the past, I just took the spare ones and I swapped them around. So you have to take 2 screws out, then you have to take these 4 screws out. And if you don't know how to do it, maybe you check online or check some of my other videos when I showed how I repaired the temperature gauge problem. What's on the other side. Also, I showed you how to repair this one. I reflowed some resistors, and that was a different task. But when it's about replacing the lights that lights up your instrument cluster so you can see it in the dark at night, in the past I stole the 2 that are used into the 4-door model, and I move them around. So those are for the doors and for the 4-wheel mode, 4-wheel drive, and differential locker on and stuff like that. So you need to be aware that the differential lock uses orange, and in my case I've used red. I did not find the orange. And for that purpose, you want to go to use LEDs like I'm using now. You need to use 12 volts LEDs, and all these are replaced with 12 volts LEDs, and you can find the 12 volts LEDs at the electronics stores. And I found 12 volts LEDs at one of the local electronics store, $1.50 a piece. It says super green 12 volts. And also I found super red. It's called super red. I don't know why they call it super red. They are not super bright, but the important thing for me was to avoid using resistors in series to connect the LEDs to the board. And so I used 12 volts LEDs here. I could take one apart. Let me see if I take one out, see how it looks like. I need to put it back, make sure I'm putting it back in the same polarity. So you see, it's just an LED. I'm not sure. Maybe you can find one of these things online. People sell online with sockets for this type of board. I did not check that. I just rebuilt it. So I took out the little lamps. I removed the lamps using a tweezer or a little needle. And I wrapped around the LED pins or terminals. And I got my 12 volts LEDs lights or lamps uh, for my instrument cluster here. But also this one has some bigger bulbs like these guys to light up all these instruments. And the original ones are regular light bulbs, 12 volts light bulbs, and they wrapped it in blue to give you a better kind of a light. But the thing is, they still provide a yellowish light. And what I did, I went to the electronics store and I bought blue. It's called blue something. Let me see what it says. Diffuse blue LED. But for this, you need to use a resistor in series. And the clerk looked up for the specs and he gave me resistor, limiting resistors, 270 ohms, I guess. Let me check. 200 ohms, okay, a quarter watt. And he said that is based on the LED specification. And of course, if I test it with 200 ohms, it will work. It will be bright enough for my purpose. But the resistor is getting warm beyond my comfort, and I don't want to see any warmth, any temperature or any heat on this PC board because I already have some brown, black, dark area because of the overheating of these old lamps. These old lamps are running 6, 7 hours, 10 hours, depends how long I drive. And look what happens here. And the problem with this design is that at the bottom below, behind this stuff is plastic. So if you heat up with your soldering iron to do stuff that I did here, like I did here, you need to be very careful. Don't overheat the PC board, the flexible copper traces here, because you're going to melt the layer underneath. So you need to be very careful. You need to use some flux in order to get rid of the oxidation, because they are aging and the temperature here, you will have a layer of oxidation on top of these copper traces. So you need to scrape that one, use some flux, then you can solder it. But like I said, you need to be careful about how long you hold the soldering iron on this flexible traces. Also, the LEDs don't like the temperature, so you need to keep in mind that the LED is plastic. So if you heat it up too much, then you will melt the pin and you'll soften the plastic around all the way to the junction into the semiconductor, the actual part that is generating light. So don't overheat the LED's terminals, and you can do a way better job. I did it quick. I tried to minimize the time I'm spending on this thing because it's just a project. So I bent the pins here, and I had to bend it down so I don't put tension. Once I release the soldering iron, when it dries, it's no tension on the pin, so it will not pull up the PCB traces. So that's kind of the way I've done it here. You see the resistors, because of this big fat LEDs, need the limiting resistor, and I've used 1 kilo ohm in parallel, and I tested it and they don't get warm. because now I have 2/4 watts, which makes half a watt resistor total, and 2 kilo ohms means 500 ohms in total, and it's better than the 200 ohms they recommended for me, because these LEDs, I noticed that they give me pretty good light. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some goop on these things to prevent the LEDs from getting pushed or whatever, you know, just extra protection on these things, because now they are not removable. I have to remove it using soldering iron, and it's not like this type sockets. Yeah, it's fine, I don't use any goop on this, but on this one with the resistors on around, and this one's probably okay, I can press on it, I'm confident, they are solid, but this one with the resistors, I don't like it. So I did not have a 12 volts LEDs this size. I think is a 5 millimeter, I don't know, let me check. Let me check what it says on the bag. 8 millimeter. Okay, so like I said, these ones are empty for my type of truck with 3 doors only. This is rear door. But the problem is, when it's not actually a problem. The challenge is to find the correct polarity. So it took me a while to see. I marked which is red, which is green, which is positive, which is negative. So I had to go back and forth to the truck to install this one and test until I found the correct polarity on this thing. And I'm not going to tell you this is positive, this is negative. You can see some marks here, right? So I did some digging and some measuring around here to minimize the number of trips. I'm going back and forth to the truck to test, come back, resolder, solder. You know, it was a bit of an annoyment, but now it's okay. I'm cool, and I'll show you how the new light look like. So I will use a bit of this stuff, and in a minute I'll go back to my car to do a test, and I'll show you. Looks ugly, I know. Once I use some of that white stuff just to keep the LEDs, the 8 millimeter LEDs in place with the resistors. It's a lot of vibration in these cars, and I don't want to take this one apart again. Now, this one, I need to show you, there is a module that is part of the speedometer, and the what's kind of a logger. It logs the mileage, and the speedometer has a computer, and so inside there is a chip, and in order to access this light bulb here, you need to take this module out, and of course you have to put it back. And in the past, when I did some repair on this module, I reflowed the resistors and stuff, because the same module will power the instruments for temperature and like a coolant temperature, and the fuel. I'm not sure if the fuel goes through the same one. So RPM, all those get signals from this module, because it's electronically connected to the engine computer. So this one gets some data, and then spill out some stuff, and also is recording your mileage, so you cannot really fool the LCD to when you want to sell the car. I mean, people probably can do it, but anyway. So this is the module. You need to put it back, and there are some contacts here. If they don't connect properly, or if you don't set it properly, you wreck it. Also, you see these pins into this connector, so they have to mate in here. So don't rush, don't be like a teenager trying to get the results. No, you need to be very patient and do it right, because it's hard to get one of those for cheap, the whole thing for cheap. If you wreck it, like PC board traces and stuff, then you have to install some bridges like wiring, and it's not a pleasant job for some. What I noticed here, some of these ones, some of these bridges, especially at the diode level, my brake, I had one broken. I don't know if it was a vibration or me handling, like putting pressure on this flex conduit, a flex cable or flex traces. I'm not sure, but one of the lights would not lit, and I kept turning the light, turning back and forth. I said, oh, that's supposed to be the rear door, but it was not working. So I found a bad trace right at one of the diodes. Was broken trace, so I had to scrape some of the paint and add some solder and stuff like that. Now I'm going to install it back in the car, see how it goes. And with that module installed back, you need to be careful that these screws go into plastic. So I wrecked one of the plastic nut side a few years ago. So don't make mistakes on this one, because then you have to fix that stuff. I use some glue, but yeah, I'm just letting you know. That's why I'm recording this video, so my mistakes won't be your mistakes. I suggest you to start with this screw. So you align, there are a bunch of contacts here underneath, and before you install it, you check the two connectors here, align it. So once it's properly set here, I suggest to go this one with the middle screw, so it's all aligned as a pressure wise, and then one screw, then tighten this one, tighten, and you can go cross if you like. If you go try this, that, so you know what I mean. So like make sure you put equal pressure on, especially in those contacts here. I had problem before when I tried to set it back, and for some reason I would get some weird numbers on my LCD display that shows the mileage, the odometer. So anyway, so I learned from that one, but I wrecked this part of plastic. So I'm going to the car to install it. I have to say that again, this is a Mitsubishi Pajero, the 3-door model, but the 4 model should have the same instrument cluster. And the idea of changing the LEDs or the installing LED is to have less maintenance needs, and the LEDs will last much longer than the light bulbs. So it's obvious a good idea to replace the light bulbs, especially when you have a couple of those blown. So that's a connector at the back. So once you know these connectors, how they look like, you know what to expect. So you see the mating connectors here are made out of flexible PC board, flexible traces. So you make sure you don't wreck those. So the mating is on the top side. So let's do that. Let me put some light for this phone. Now it's back in place, but I haven't installed the screws at the top, the screws at the bottom. You can adjust the steering wheel height, so you can have more room to work around here. And as you can see, I already have a door open, which is now LED. If I close the door, of course it's... So I have enough light. I love it. And let's put the key in the ignition to turn this one to see some lights. Actually, it's too much light for the camera now. And that was a test. You see the two lights came off, and now I turn the lights on for the night. The blue on the top It's part of the old lights, so I did not change. There is no bulb for these ones. Even these ones here, I think are still little old bulbs that are soldered on the PC board. I did not change those because I would have to take the whole thing out, and it's a big job, so I didn't want to do that. But for now, I'm happy to see this blue light. And the good thing that I can adjust it. I can adjust the brightness. You see, it's now bright. And let me close the door. And yeah, I'm pleased with the result, especially when it's blue and keeps me awake better than the old lights that were kind of a yellowish now because of the maybe that plastic cover on each light bulb was kind of fading away. I don't know, but I love this color. Look at that. It's like a, what? It's like I have a more of a recent car. I'm excited. So if I change the two-wheel drive to the four-wheel drive, will turn those things on. Then the problem is, you see that red in the middle, it's actually red. It's supposed to be orange, and I did not install a proper color, but I still see some red right in the middle. So now I disconnect the differential lock and I take off the four wheel. And if I look at the odometer, that one also shows me all the numbers, all the digits are correct. I'm happy. And what else you need to see? Not much. The doors all work. I tested already. So I put that goop on the resistors, and now I'm confident that